Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, shills, debt slavers, peasants, vassals, meat sacks. I'm a useful idiot. Welcome. And I want to talk about this Seymour Hersh article that's come out now. And of course, we know Seymour Hersh from other bombshells, including the entire Osama bin Laden killing raid hoax, which I tend to agree with. And so this new one is a sort of a bombshell, but sort of not, is my read on it. His basic premise is that some elements within U.S. military began basically cooperating with Assad, the leader of Syria, 2 years ago after becoming concerned with Turkey and Saudi Arabia's support for Sunni extremists. Something that was hardly unexpected. So that's one of the problems I have with this. It was a covert plot by the Joint Chiefs of Staff to undercut the Obama's public line of Assad must go. So essentially working to keep Assad in power. And supposedly these same rogue elements shared valuable intelligence with Assad. And then the report also verifies the role of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, especially Turkey, in arming and financing al-Nusra Front, al-Qaeda in Syria and Iraq, and ISIS. So let's look essentially at that. So like I say, the fact that they are becoming concerned about Sunni extremists seems a little misguided, because this week also revealed, or at least the last couple of weeks, revealed a 2012 report, 7 pages long, about talking about the dangers of U.S. Syria policy, and warns of the rise of Salafist or Sunni extremists. And it turns out that's exactly what the Western Powers Coalition wanted. So this revealing this report from 2012 seems to be a little bit at odds with this Seymour Hersh exposure. But that, I don't want to read too much into that, because it doesn't surprise me that different branches of the military, different parts of the military and different branches of government would have documentation and intelligence that's completely at odds with each other. So I don't want to rule that out. And then the fact that there's rogue elements, so certainly we've seen that throughout history, that there are elements, intelligence elements, corporate elements, government elements, military elements that are all have a certain life of their own, and can work to usurp each other's power, have territorial battles and the like. So that's certainly not surprising either, that there are possible rogue elements. And in this report about Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and especially Turkey arming and financing al-Qaeda and ISIS, well, that's certainly nothing new to anyone who's been paying attention, or certainly watching my videos for the last couple of years. We've discussed that over and over and over again, as has most alternative press. But there's also this 2013 report that talks about the fall of Assad would lead to chaos in a Libya-like situation, and who knows what kind of unpredictable group of extremists. Although, like I say, this 2012 report seems to spell out that they knew that the extremists would end up being Salafists. And but the 2013 report, and Seymour Hersh references this, as what started as a limited covert operation to arm moderate opposition was co-opted by Turkey and expanded to include all opposition. And I'm not entirely sure of that characterization now. It's becoming clear now that this talk of a free Syrian army that the United States was involved in supposedly setting up and training, and that Turkey was involved in setting up and training, it turns out, look, it's been creating ISIS all along. And so to talk about there was some covert operation to arm moderate opposition, of course, once again, I don't want to read too much into the language here, because we might be talking about the same thing. They're muddying the water again, talking about a moderate opposition, when all along they knew there wasn't any. And also the idea of Turkey expanding this opposition in Syria to include all elements would certainly go a long way in explaining the rise of the more jihadi elements of the opposition, and that's all we have left now. How could the secular opposition survive in such an environment? And so the Joint Chiefs of Staff apparently felt a direct challenge of Obama's policies wouldn't work, so they just provided intelligence to other countries who would pass the intelligence on to Assad. And that fact alone seems to diffuse things for me a little bit. No direct contact with Syria, apparently, all done through Germany, Israel, and Russia. And the fact that these rogue elements were working with Israel and Russia and Germany makes sense. I think it's more dramatic that it undercuts the general public narrative. It seems that the U.S. is indeed working with Russia to a certain extent, or at least these rogue elements are. And one of the reasons why this is all credible in some sense, as well as it goes a long way in explaining some of the paradoxes and questions we have about what's occurring in Syria and in United States policy. And it seems like for a while, with the introduction of so many different air forces in Syria and the direct intervention with U.S. airstrikes there, and now Russia, it would have to be that for a while these have been coordinated, and we've also discussed that idea before in the past and in other videos as well. So, so some credibility is given to this report because certainly, like I say, that answers some questions. So apparently they also convinced the CIA to have Turkey supply arms to the opposition too, instead of shipping from more remote areas. And that's something I'm going to talk about in another video, because we have a lot of discussions about not only Turkey training ISIS and supporting them while they're in Syria and helping to smuggle ISIS oil out, but we also have a lot of talk of Turkey actually arming ISIS. So that's an important element of this as well. And intelligence reports also show that Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, has been supporting al-Nusra Front, and it was doing the same for ISIS is no big deal for them. And we know that to be true as well, al-Nusra Front. And we also know that al-Nusra Front is helping Turkey confront Kurdish independence Kurdish independence fighters in both Syria and Iraq. And last but not least, I mean, I think one of the main criticisms I've seen of the Seymour Hersh article is the fact that theoretically it is only the word of one anonymous former senior advisor, whatever that means. And so there doesn't seem to be a lot of cross-referencing the story or validation. But like I say, looking at it closely, there's some points about it that certainly seem to make a lot of sense, and other ones that don't. But taken all together, I think it's an interesting glimpse into what's going on in Syria and this relationship with Turkey and ISIS. But I'm not sure if I'm seeing a bombshell. Once again, I reference the fact that right now we also have this 2012 report, which to me, this is more dramatic than the Seymour Hersh article, and that is the 2012 report talking about the dangers of the U.S. Syria policy, and warns of the rise of Wahhabism, Salafists, a caliphate, and that was exactly what Western powers coalition wanted for destabilization purposes. So that is the bombshell here. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too?